EV Comply, simplifying your charge point installations.
Christmas Eve, and this year I've spoke to some fantastic, fascinating people in the industry, so let's take a look back on those interviews. So I'm currently joined with Sam Clarke, Chief Vehicle Officer at GRIDSERVE, who are in fact the brains behind the UK's first electric forecourt. Hello, Sam.
Hi, Chelsea. Nice to be here. Hi.
Yeah, thank you for joining us on the podcast. We really appreciate it. So, I think I've just said it, the UK's first electric forecourt. That's a pretty cool claim for you to have, isn't it?
Yeah, it may even be the first one in the world. We're not entirely sure, but we certainly think it's definitely the best, or the first one in the UK. Yeah, so we're incredibly proud to get it up and running now. Yeah, it's one of over 100 sites we're going to build around the country in the next 5 years. So we've got really fierce ambitions to get that done. The one in Braintree in Essex just happened to be one that the stars aligned first with, and we've got a very complex data set that we have to analyse to see what the best location is, and it's based on a lot of parameters, but things like vehicle movements around the busy roads. It's on a very busy dual carriageway in the A131 in Great Notley with thousands of cars travelling down that road every single day. Then we've got grid connection considerations, as well as where our energy is coming from. We build and own solar farms as well, so we've got a location 44 miles down the road, which is a 60-acre solar farm, which is generating all the energy for site, as well as other means of use of that energy. So
I honestly think that the way you've gone about it, the concessions, the whole look of the thing as well, aesthetically it's very pleasing, and you've made something that could ultimately have been quite boring, fit really well, and it doesn't look too outlandish either. You've not gone super spacecraft on it, which I think can happen with EV. I think a few people can think, this is the future, let's make it look like the future. And I think, aesthetically, it's very pleasing. It's very practical, clearly, because like you say, a lot of people are using it. And I think the concession side of it's brilliant because, I absolutely love when I stop off anywhere. It's my favourite part about travelling anywhere, to just have a nosy round and see. And the fact that you've put that in, or for the coffee or whatever, I think it's brilliant. I really do.
I think it's a good recipe generally, actually. Going down to Cornwall a few times, in the last few years, and stopping off at Darts Farm in Exeter, which has got a Tesla superchargers, but it's got so much more. It's got a farm shop and fields and play areas and stuff that people, the first time we went there as a family, I needed to charge for 20 minutes. We were there for an hour, because there were other things to do. And I think we're not necessarily trying to go for that extreme case, but not a good case, good business case, good example that it is. But I think if you can create enough interest around the other things you're doing while you're there, such that the charging doesn't become something where you're stood on the side of the road in the pouring rain waiting in a frustration, but actually, I'm here for 20 minutes, I'm going to have a coffee, the kids are going to be in the play area, I might check my emails, I've got to alleviate the bladder range, which we've all got. Yeah. So once you've done all of those things and your brain's busy doing other things for 10 or 15 minutes, and then charging is something that just happens to be done while you're doing that part of the of your life, then I think it starts to sing a little bit more to perhaps the next generation of EV drivers that don't yet have one.
And I am very excited to say I'm joined with Jordan Farley from Artisan Electrics. Hey.
Hello, nice to be with you. It's just exponential growth at the moment, really. I don't think anyone could have ever predicted how fast the uptake of electric vehicles would be, but certainly in the last 2 years particularly, it's been massive. And we've seen it from our side just in the number of inquiries that we're getting all the time for electric vehicle charging. We're getting so many calls every day from people wanting EV charge points installed. A lot of that is off the back of our YouTube videos, because we do quite a lot of informational videos helping people to understand what chargers are out there, what's involved in getting them installed, what does the customer need to know before they can get one installed. So that brings a lot of leads in for us, which is really nice. But in general, we're seeing so many contractors having the same thing, where they've positioned themselves as EV experts, and they're getting so many inquiries for EV charging points because people are buying EVs now. They want to help the transition to more sustainable forms of transport, and they're doing their bit for the environment, which is nice. Plans as well as a business, we're growing rapidly. We're trying to take on more electricians to get more great EV charging installations done, but we're also looking to be able to help train other electricians as well. because a lot of people look to us now for advice about how to get into EV charging as a part of their business. So we're working on things in the background to actually be able to help other electricians to get into the industry too.
I am currently joined with Mike Lanigan, who is Head of Operations at Moixa. Hello, Mike.
Hi, Chelsea. How are you doing?
I'm really good. How are you?
Good. Very good. Thank you. Yeah.
It is a great sector to be in at the moment. It's it's all happening, shall we say. Now, how have you found the uptake of smart batteries, hardware and smart energy storage, which is, of course, what you focus on? Has it been fast? Has there been an increase? Is it a bit of a slow burn? How is it?
Yeah, I think it's it's kind of growing faster and faster. I think possibly been a bit slow, but we can really see how it's kind of increasing and people becoming more aware. And what I think is quite interesting is that there's two kind of key drivers for this uptake. I think the initial uptake and kind of what is probably the most prevalent now is people who are looking for kind of energy independence. And so what they're doing is they're using the batteries to maximize the use of their solar output and reduce their energy bills. But I think over time, what you're going to see is a shift towards a model of a kind of like a democratization of energy, where people aren't looking to be energy independent, but actually to be more actively involved in the energy system. And under this model, they'll be kind of storing energy to sell, depending on the market requirements for the grid. And this kind of second model that I described, also ultimately reduces energy bills and generates revenue. But it's, as opposed to the first one, it's really about people becoming more actively involved in the energy system as opposed to trying to kind of, isolate themselves from it.
So another week, another podcast, and very excitingly, I'm joined with Nick Leslie, who is Head of Climate Action Now at Stockport Council. Hey, Nick.
Hey, Chelsea, how are you doing?
Are kind of focusing and noticing, that more needs to be done, really. So you have got loads going on, haven't you, really? But firstly, obviously, with the podcast mainly being around kind of the car industry and motoring, tell me what it is you're planning on doing with regards to transport, because that's a big one to tackle, isn't it?
Yeah. And as we know from, carbon footprints of organisations, local authorities, national carbon footprint, transport is a huge proportion of our greenhouse gas emissions. So it's a really important sector to tackle. And in fact, it is one of our key work streams that we have, one of the key components of our overarching strategy at Stockport Council. So we're very much approaching it from encouraging carbon-free transport. So we really try to increase walking and cycling and access to public transport. So that's the main thrust. I think you alluded to it. There's a lot going on in this space at the moment, but there is so much more to do, and it involves infrastructure. I think infrastructure is a huge issue that we need to get hold of. Obviously around EV charge points, things like that. So yeah, it is very high up our agenda, if not top, one of the top work streams within what we want to do. But yeah, we need to keep transforming the walking and cycling opportunities, I think. So that's the sort of carbon-free transport, but also enabling use of electric vehicles as well. And that involves, I think, very much installing that charge point network, joining things together. And I think certainly in the short term with my role, it's about building those sort of networks between businesses, communities, residents to come together and sort of and join up on this. And I think that's the issue with climate change, really. The council, Stockport Council, has got a big role to play in the locale, a huge role. We not just in terms of its own operations, but also in terms of influencing what happens in the whole borough too.
So I'm currently joined with Nick Tucker, who is in fact co-owner of EV Wales and EV Tower. Hey, Nick.
How's things? How are you?
Yeah, really, really good. Thank you. As ever, thank you for spending your time and coming on the podcast this week. We appreciate it.
No, that's fantastic. I'd be glad to voice my opinion on a few things.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that being said, and obviously working and knowing and coming from an electrical background, do you think the 2030 target is realistic? Do you think we can do it?
I would like to say yes, but I think it's going to take a lot more sort of collaboration between installers as such. I think to get that united goal of we need to deliver this as installers, that the more partnerships that can be forged and the more we can work together as an industry, I think it's doable. The numbers say that it's picking up month on month, so there's no reason. It's just having the right workforce and getting the guys trained, get them on the road, and start getting these charges in.
Definitely. I mean, in the podcast last week, I did a government announcement, which is basically them saying that they're crying out now for electricians to learn about kind of EV installations and how to move forward. So obviously this is something you do. It's a transition that presumably you did from just, being a spark to this. So what would you say to anyone who's listening to the podcast who's maybe thinking about kind of moving into the EV sector?
Yeah, as a company, I think you'd be crazy not to. The work's there, it's an exciting industry. Everyone's more than helpful. Everyone I've spoken to and directed us in the right direction over the past 2 years, everyone's been fantastic, to be fair. I would like to see some industry change from the training providers, possibly, where there was an EV course developed rather than it being a broad spectrum of to get your electrical qualifications. It can take some time, it's sort of 4 years to become a fully fledged electrical engineer, whereas I see it being a kind of meter engineering kind of job where you're trained specifically to do EV rather than having to go through the wheel as such to get qualified before you can put the chargers in.
I'm actually joined with Sophie Adams, who is Head of Consumer Experience at OZEV. Hey, Sophie.
Hi.
It's so nice, as I've said to you before, to be talking to a girl in this industry, because they're kind of few and far between still, which is sad.
It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, there are a lot of women that I'm seeing now sort of come into this sector, and that is hugely exciting. And there's some great role models, which, to be honest, that I'm really happy about.
Now, you obviously do a lot within the sector, as you've just kind of touched upon, but the biggest thing, of course, is the grant system that's currently in place with OZEV, which is helping people move forward and adopt the EV process. So we ourselves have kind of seen firsthand the demand increase for grants over the last 18 months, because that's part of obviously our EV Comply app that we do help people to kind of deal with the paperwork and stuff. But how has OZEV adapted to these challenges, do you think, to deal with the increase in workflow and the processing, really? Because we've seen a massive influx, so you must have your end.
I mean, the demand for the home charge, workplace charge point grants and the plug-in grants, it's risen hugely, and very much looking at demand for zero emission vehicles. I mean, as you were saying, over the past 18 months, it is amazing. But it's also really presented us with some challenges to actually, as you mentioned, how to process these grant applications and make sure that these are matched in demand as well. But we're making sure that in the medium term that we are running off platforms that offer more resilience. So as you get more requests on a day-to-day basis, that we can process these really easily. And for example, on World EV Day, we had announced more detail on sort of what we're going to do in the near future. But to be honest, we're looking at how we can make sure that the grant makes the most difference and constantly keeping them under review. So what do consumers need? What do installers need? And really understanding what is the function of all of this. We don't want to mirror the current system of going to refuel your petrol and diesel car, but actually the charging of your EV should be seamless. It should be part of your day-to-day life. So actually it's understanding how we go and talk to industry, go and talk to our users, consumer bodies, and to make improvements now, such as even things like open data, so consumers can find the charge point that is right for their needs, ensuring that the network is reliable, that you've got basic payment methods, that this is streamlined, and you have pricing transparency, all of which we have been consulting on over the last year. And it's those key learnings that actually it's not just about one component, but a more holistic approach. What is the outcome that we actually want to get to? What is the outcome that the consumers want over the next 5, 10, 20 years to decarbonise transport and work back from that? So the grants are one part of this as well. Our infrastructure is another part, and also looking at how do we encourage home charging and what happens in a smarter world as well. So how can we work with other home technologies? So it's not a single piece of work. This is a really huge and embedded piece of work across government.
I'm joined with Paul Kirby, Head of EV and LCV at Vanarama, the UK's leading independent commercial and personal vehicle online leasing company with nearly 30 years experience. A massive hello, Paul Kirby.
Well, hello. Gosh, I sound really important. You know, there are a number of vans, but if we look back to the beginning of 2020, there was 5 vans available. There'd been a couple more, but they'd ended, and that was it. And there was 5 vans available. At the end of 2020, there was about 14 available, which is great. But what we've got is a situation where the CEOs of big companies are sending out their messages about electrification by 2025 or 2027. There's 40 or 50 companies all signed up to the clean van commitment, which is electrification of the entire fleet by 2028. So there's a lot of big fish all chasing what is relatively small in terms of bait in the electric van. But my encouragement to people is to really step into it and come and ask those questions, particularly around electric vans, because there's lots and lots of benefits.
With things like this, you have to just do it, like you say. And how brilliant. I mean, it sounds so simple, doesn't it? Because you think you charge your phone every night, you'll put even your Apple Watch on charge, you'll do this, you'll do that, and then they go, oh, but I've got to plug in a car. But I think everyone remembers actually first filling up with petrol or diesel in their first car. I remember that, and I know you will, and everyone listening will have a memory where you pull in the petrol station and then it's sheer panic. And it's so simple. It's so simple now. And obviously you do it with your eyes shut. But when you first passed, and that's really what everyone else is reverting back to now. It's that kind of first pass mentality almost. Yes. Because it's so new. And I think that, I think we can all empathise with that, and the fact that obviously you do pull up and think, oh, which side's my petrol pump on? Ringing your dad or whatever. Is it petrol? Is it diesel? I'm a bit unsure. And so I think to go and do it is absolutely brilliant, but not mainly for people to not feel silly. And like you said earlier, which I really like, there is no stupid question in this. So even if you think, oh, that might be a bit daft because this person knows so much about EV and I don't want to look silly, we're all kind of learning together. So all questions are welcomed, aren't they?
Yeah, I think it's easy to sound really clever in this world at the moment. The fact is we're probably 2 paces ahead of anybody else. Do you know what I mean? And it's like that in the big scheme of things, it's just about passing knowledge on down the line. And you go through and you just hand it back. And I'm certainly not particularly clever or particularly knowledgeable about electric vehicles. I'm not. But I happen to know a little bit more because I happen to do it as a job. And therefore I can talk with people and it sounds really clever. And actually, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to work all this stuff out. And you're absolutely right. Just stepping into the experience. I mean, my encouragement to anybody and everybody is just get started. Just start on that journey, even if it's investigate a little something, go to your local charge point. I was at a charge point in Milton Keynes not too very long ago, and I saw a car turn up in the background that I wasn't familiar with, and I looked across, and it was a Ford Mustang Mach-E, and it's not out yet. Yeah. So I mean, it was just out now, I think, and so it was FMC1, so that was the number plate. Which is Ford Motor Company number 1. Yeah. So it was it was one of the 6 test vehicles that were in the UK. So I went over to the guy, of course, because even though I would prefer to be a van, it was a car, but it was a cool car, and the prancing, well, not the prancing horse, but the horse on the front and all that sort of stuff. It's all cool, right? So. But he didn't have a clue how to charge the thing, and he wasn't sure because he was just doing it for a job to put some miles on it, and he didn't really know much about it. And so I said, what we need to do is this, and this is because the charge points, right? They don't always work. Shock horror, I know it's hot news, right? But they don't always work, and we do need to get better at that. It's definitely one area where we need to get better. So I had to help him, and we tried 2 or 3 charge points, and we eventually got him hooked up and got him charging this Mustang Mach-E, and I got to look at it a little bit. But it is about stepping into situations and saying, let me help you get started. let me offer help. You know, don't stand on the sidelines, but step into it and give it a go. That's the way I see it.
You should have told him you were the charging wizard, and only if you drove it for 5 miles would it then be charged. And he should let you have a go.
Absolutely. Oh dear. Yeah.
He might have fallen for it, to be fair.
He might have.
I don't know how that would go down when he goes back. Where's the car? Well, it's with the charging wizard. I'd be like, what? Thank you so much for listening to our EV Comply podcast. We absolutely love bringing you the latest news and interviews from people within the industry, and we hope that you enjoy listening as much as we do making it. We'll be back with you on the last day of the month, bringing you a yearly roundup and special podcast, so make sure you tune in. From everybody here at EV Comply, you have a fantastic Christmas day and enjoy some time off work.